Summer is supposed to be a time for vacations, barbecues, and late nights with friends. But sometimes, the heat brings out more than just good times. Tonight, you'll hear 3 true summer horror stories, each one a reminder that danger does not take a vacation. Let's get into it. Last summer, I spent a Saturday at the beach with some friends. It was one of those perfect summer days. Clear skies, a light breeze, and the sun so bright it almost hurt to look at the water. We got there late in the morning, right as the tide was starting to go out. The sand was warm under my feet, and the ocean looked perfect, honestly. Steady waves, just big enough for swimming without knocking you over. The beach was not even that crowded, which is rare for a weekend in July. Just a few families spread out with umbrellas and coolers, a couple of teenagers tossing frisbees, and the usual jogger moving along the shoreline. We picked a spot maybe 30 yards from the lifeguard tower, close enough to feel safe leaving our stuff, far enough that we wouldn't have a whistle blown at us every time we went out past waist deep. I laid my towel down, kicked off my sandals, and settled in. My friends, Kelsey and Matt, were already unpacking snacks and a little Bluetooth speaker that we had. The whole day felt normal, relaxing. We swam, we played paddleball, we just lay in the sun talking about nothing really. I did not notice anything unusual. Not then I didn't. We stayed until the sun started to dip lower, the light turning that golden brown. Around 6, we started packing up. I was folding my towel when I noticed something in the sand about a foot from where I'd been sitting all day. At first, I thought it was just a shell or a piece of driftwood, but when I brushed some sand away, I realized it was a cell phone. It had a black case, a cracked screen, but the display was still lit up. If I'm being honest, it looked like it had been half buried deliberately, not just dropped by accident. I picked it up, looking around to see if anyone was nearby who might have lost it. But there was no one within earshot except my friends, and neither of them recognized it. The phone was not locked. That struck me as odd immediately. No passcode, no fingerprints, no security. I swiped up to check for any obvious owner information. A wallpaper with a name, maybe, or emergency contacts. Nothing. The background was just plain black. Something in me, I don't know if it was curiosity or instinct, made me go to the photo gallery. And that's when I felt my stomach drop. The entire gallery, I'm talking dozens and dozens of photos, was of me. Not selfies I'd taken, not pictures from my own social media. These were all from that day. The first one was me, sitting cross-legged on my towel, talking to Kelsey. The next, me walking toward the water. Another of me, leaning down to grab my drink out of the cooler. Whoever took them had been close. Some shots looked like they were taken from only a few feet away. The more I scrolled, the more my hands started to shake. There were at least 30 photos from different angles. Me lying on my stomach reading, standing at the shoreline, adjusting my ponytail. One picture showed me rubbing sunscreen onto my legs, and I swear it couldn't have been taken more than 3 feet away. I asked Kelsey and Matt if they'd seen anyone hanging around near our spot, but they both shook their heads. Then I noticed there were also videos. I opened one. The camera was shaking slightly, like it was being held from waist height. It showed me and my friends tossing the frisbee, but the lens never left me. The audio was muffled, like it was hidden under clothing. Another video was darker, filmed from behind a dune. It zoomed in slowly until my face filled the frame. you could hear faint breathing behind the camera. In one clip, I wasn't even doing anything, just lying on my towel with my eyes closed, but it went on for almost 2 minutes. That's when it hit me. Whoever this phone belonged to had been watching me all day, close enough to record every move I made, and I hadn't noticed a thing. I felt exposed, violated. Kelsey suggested that we take the phone to the lifeguard station, so we walked it over. I handed it to one of the lifeguards and explained what I found. He looked uncomfortable and said there wasn't much he could do. Lifeguards aren't allowed to just go through personal property, even if it's suspicious. He told me my best bet was to call the police. So I did. When the officer arrived, I explained everything, showing him the photos and the videos. He took notes but kept shaking his head. Without knowing who the phone belonged to, he said there wasn't much they could do right then. He said he'd take the phone in for review, but it sounded like I was just being brushed off if I'm being honest. The officer left, and so did we. But the rest of the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching me. Every time I looked over my shoulder walking back to the car, I expected to see someone just standing there. And the more I thought about it, the worse I felt. Whoever this person was, they'd been within arm's reach of me for hours. For the next couple of weeks, I found myself looking over my shoulder everywhere. In the grocery store, at the gym, even just walking my dog. I did not go back to that beach for the rest of the summer. And the phone? I never heard back from the police. Not once. No follow-up call, no report. For all I know, the person who was behind those pictures is still out there. And maybe that's the worst part. The not knowing. Because now, every time I go anywhere in public, I scan the crowd. I wonder if someone's pointing their camera at me right now. And I wonder, if I'd never found that phone, how long would it have gone before I realized? The 4th of July has its way of making people feel comfortable. Maybe too comfortable. Barbecues, fireworks, music drifting through the air. It's the kind of night where strangers blend in, and no one thinks twice about it. That was the vibe when my roommates and I decided to have a small backyard get-together. Nothing big, just some friends, music, drinks, and a few packs of cheap fireworks. Casual, come-and-go vibes, if you catch my drift. We spent the afternoon setting up. Just ran to the store for chips and ice. Dan dragged the folding table out from the garage. I untangled a set of white string lights from a storage bin and clipped them along the back fence. We raked the patchy grass, wiped down the lawn chairs, and tossed a cornhole set near the shed. By 8:30, the cooler was full and the grill smelled like burgers. The people came in waves. First, the core group, co-workers, a couple of neighbors, friends we actually see. Then the second wave, the plus ones and my buddy's coming, he's cool types. In a yard filled with 20 plus people, you don't know every face. You just assume someone else does. That's when I noticed him. Gray hoodie, hood up, hands in pockets. He stood where our string lights faced the shadow, just inside the back fence line. Not glaring, not obvious. More like he wanted to be near the noise without being a part of it. He drifted toward clusters of conversations, hovered close enough to listen, then slid back to the dark spot by the fence. I told myself he was shy. That happens at parties. About 20 minutes later, Jess leans into me. "Who's the guy in the gray hoodie?" I shrugged. "Did you invite him?" She shook her head. We asked Dan. He said no. That was the first red flag. At small parties, you can usually triangulate who brought who in under a minute, but no one could. We decided to approach him. Just a quick, "Hey, you good?" But by the time we crossed the yard, he was gone. He was not in the kitchen, not in the hallway bathroom, not near the side gate. He was literally just gone. Well, we shrugged it off. The side gate wasn't locked. Maybe he slipped out to another party, or realized he was at the wrong address. The night smoothed out again. Fireworks crackled a few blocks away. Music dipped lower as the people got chatty. Around midnight, we were down to just 6 of us in a loose circle, finishing drinks and picking at the last of the chips. "The gate's open," someone said. I walked the narrow path along the house, still holding my cup. The gate was swung open, creaking a little in the breeze. And then I froze. He was there, same gray hoodie, this time on the other side of the fence, in the alley. He stood facing the house, not the street, not the sky, but our house. The nearest streetlight put his face in the shadow, but I could see the rest of his shoulders, hands still buried in his pockets, head tilted just slightly, like he was listening to something inside. "Hey, the party's over," I said, calm voice, both hands on the gate. He did not answer. He did not even flinch. After a few long seconds, he turned and walked down the alley. Not fast, not like he'd been caught, like he had all the time in the world. I closed the gate, locked it, checked it twice. When I came back inside and told everyone, you could feel the mood deflate. We wrapped it up. People helped collect cans and paper plates. We made sure every door and window latched before the last guest left. Morning came with the usual party cleanup. Cups in the flower bed, a sparkler wire in the lawn, a folded chair sitting weird in the corner, and 3 cigarette butts pressed into the dirt by the gate. All in that same little spot, heel marks beside them. None of us smoke. We bagged the trash, tried to shrug it off. But you start thinking in specifics after something like that. Did he hear Jess ask about him? Did he watch us lock the slider? How long was he at the gate before someone noticed? The next few days were normal. Then, around dinner a week later, Dan grabbed the mail and came in with that look. He's outside. He kept his voice level, but his face said it all. Across the street, a dark blue sedan idled at the curb. Driver in a gray hoodie, seat leaned back, one hand at the base of the steering wheel. Not doing anything illegal, just parked there, watching. Dan lifted his phone and took a photo. The driver's head tilted. The sedan rolled forward, turning at the corner, and then disappeared. We called the non-emergency number, explained the party, the alley, the cigarette butts, the sedan. The officer was polite. He said they'll do extra patrols that night. Without a plate, a name, or a crime, there wasn't much else they could do. He gave us an incident number and told us to call if we saw the car again. That night we got practical. New locks on the side gate, motion light over the yard, blinds closed after sunset. We moved the grill away from the fence so there was less cover. It felt a little paranoid, I get it, but also like we were finally doing something. For a while, nothing. A week went by, and then 2. It was almost 2 weeks later, just after 2 a.m., when the motion light popped on. I was awake on the couch, half watching TV with headphones on. The backyard flashed white through the blinds, then settled to steady bright. I paused the video and muted everything. In that new silence, I could hear it. Not footsteps, exactly. Weight. A shift of something against wood. The fence boards can make a soft, dragging sound when someone brushes past them. I shook Dan awake and texted Jess to stay in her room. We stood by the back door, side by side, staring through a thin slit in the blinds. The yard was empty. The light timed out and clicked off. We did not open the door. We did not go out and look. We just stood there, listening, until the silence felt like it had always been there. Morning revealed fresh scuffs on the bottom fence rail near the gate. A small patch of dirt looked smoothed over, like someone had rubbed it with the toe of a shoe. Nothing you could show a cop as a smoking gun. Just enough to make you feel dumb for seeing it. We changed small things after that, and parked the cars in different spots, switched which room light we left on, told the neighbors on either side in case they spotted a blue sedan. The older couple next door said they'd seen a guy in a hoodie walking the alley late a few nights back, but they could not make out his face. 2 nights later, the motion light tripped again, this time at 11:40 at night. We were ready for it, phones in hands, blinds barely opened. The light stayed on for the full cycle and died. No sounds, no shadows, just the light telling us there'd been movement. We went out the next morning in daylight. A chair we kept near the fence was angled slightly, like someone had used it as a step, then set it back down close to where it was. Or maybe we left it that way, I don't know. That's how your brain talks to you when you just want to sleep again. We considered cameras, but the cheapest one looked like props, and the decent ones were more money than we had to spare that month. So we did what most people do. We tried to live normally without feeling stupid about it. A few days after that, I saw a sedan again on my way home from work. Same body type, same dark color, 2 blocks up from our place. I slowed down to get the plate, but 2 kids ran out between cars chasing a ball, and I had to stop. By the time I turned the corner, the space was empty. Nothing big ever happened. There was no break-in, no confrontation, just the pattern. A stranger in our backyard on a holiday night, standing outside our fence hours later. Cigarette butts where no one we know smokes. A car across the street with a driver who did not want his picture taken. A motion light that seemed to know more than we did. Eventually, the sighting stopped. Or maybe we just stopped noticing. You can't live with your shoulders at your ears forever. But habits remain. I check the gate before bed now. I glance at the fence line when I kill the back light. I notice sedans. I notice hoodies. Because the scariest people don't always break in. Sometimes they stand exactly where they're allowed to stand and just wait. The summer after I graduated, my parents left for a month-long trip overseas. I stayed behind to work and save for college. At first, I loved it. Quiet, total freedom, no one asking where I was going. By the second week, the quiet started feeling different. The first note showed up one morning, a scrap of lined paper, folded once, pushed under the front door. It said, "You look sad when you eat alone." I thought it was a joke. I texted my friends a picture of the note, expecting someone to confess. But nobody did. And 2 days later, another note appeared. It said, "That show you're watching isn't very good." That's when I froze. I'd been streaming a random series in the living room with the blinds mostly shut. You'd have to be right outside the window to know this. I started keeping the curtains tight, lights low, and a chair wedged under the front door at night. But more notes came. You talk to yourself a lot. You forgot to lock the side door. And the one that made me feel sick. "Don't worry, I'm not inside." Well, I called the police. They walked the property, asked the usual questions, and said they patrolled the neighborhood more often. Without cameras or a suspect, there wasn't much they could do. That did not make it easier for me to sleep, I kept a knife by my bed and checked the locks 3 times a night. A few days later, I found a note under my windshield wiper while I was shopping. It said, "You make lists but never stick to them." I do make lists on my phone in the store. The idea that they were watching me there too terrified me. I changed routines, parking in different spots, taking new routes home. I stopped using the living room at night. Then came the one in the back fence slat. It said, "Blue mug again." That's my coffee mug. So I tested it. From the alley, you can see into the kitchen if you stand at just the right angle. A friend stayed over once. We turned it into a movie night, double-checked the locks, dragged the chair under the door. Around 2:30 a.m., we heard the mailbox lid clang. No one was outside when we checked, but there was a note under the doormat in the morning. It said, "Nice to have a friend over, I see." After that, I stopped inviting people over. The notes kept coming though. "You hum when you cook. You missed a call at 11:14. Stop staring out the window." I did not tell my parents everything, just said that there had been some weird notes and that the police were patrolling. 2 days before they came home, the mailbox clanged again. Inside was a white envelope with no stamp. The note inside was typed this time. It said, "Thanks for the company this summer. You were never really alone." It felt final, like whoever it was had decided the game was over. I never got another note. I moved out a year later, but even now, I check the floor inside the front door every morning, just in case. Because the worst part isn't wondering what they would have done if they got inside. It's knowing how much someone can learn without ever crossing the line. Hey guys, it's spooky. Those were 3 true summer horror stories. Reminders that danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it's watching from the crowd. Sometimes it's waiting just outside the fence. And sometimes it's been there all along. And if you got a story of your own, strange, unsettling, or terrifying, send it to me, and you might hear it in a future episode. Thanks for listening, and stay safe out there.